name is Isaac Montoya, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Upside Technologies. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today for our fourth and final week of our 7th Annual Airflow Management Awareness Month. For those of you who don't know or are joining us for the first time, we started Airflow Management Awareness Month back in 2015 with the intention to not only raise awareness around airflow management, but also around cooling optimization, thermal efficiency, and overall data center best practices. We have received great support from the industry, and we are happy to be back for another year. I'll be joined here shortly by Bill Clayman, Executive Vice President of Digital Solutions at Switch, who will be headlining today's webinar to discuss how modernization and new digital demands have impacted and changed the data center. We will also be joined by Lars Strong, Senior Engineer and Company Science Officer here at Upside Technologies, who will give a brief introduction for today's presentation. Now, before I pass it off, I'd like to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted throughout the duration of the webinar, but we do encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like, and you can do so using the Q&A module located in your Zoom dashboard. If you happen to have any technical difficulties throughout the duration of the webinar, please feel free to shoot me a chat message using the chat module in the Zoom dashboard, and I will try my best to resolve those issues as quickly as possible. Now, as I mentioned, this is week 4 of our annual Airflow Management Awareness Month. In week 1, we were joined by Lars Strong, who gave a very informative presentation on data center containment best practices and what to consider to maximize ROI. In week 2, Lars was joined by Tracy Collins, Vice President of Sales for the Americas at EchoSense, who discussed how artificial intelligence and machine learning can optimize data center performance. And last week, we were joined by Mark Acton, Independent Consultant and Non-Executive Director at EchoSense, who discussed how data center risk management and the importance of mitigating risk to maximize resiliency. If you happen to miss any of those presentations, please shoot me a message in the chat and I can provide you with a link to where you can watch those on demand. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Lars to get us started.
Thank you, Isaac. Well, we are really happy to have Bill joining us today to discuss this important topic. For those of you who don't know, Bill is a regular contributor to the Upside Technologies blog, where he speaks on many topics surrounding emerging technologies, like the ones you'll hear about today, as well as data center trends, data center energy efficiency, and a wide range of other topics. Bill's part of many organizations in the industry, including AFCOM and the iMasons, and is the annual presenter and key contributor to Data Center World's annual State of the Industry report. For the last few months, he's authored many articles on the Upside blog related to the metaverse, new requirements around sustainability, and working with digital twins that have caught the attention of many people in the industry. So as our industry has shown, great resilience during the unprecedented demands, of the last couple of years, we've also learned many lessons in terms of supply chain issues, remote monitoring and management, and staffing challenges. And these challenges have exposed some vulnerabilities. So much of this and the emergence of what's being referred to as the 4th industrial revolution is the topic of today's presentation. So with that, I'll pass it off to Bill to inform us about all of this.
Thank you so much, Lars, and thank you so much, Isaac. And I'm looking at the attendee list as that number continues to grow, and we have so many wonderful people joining us. Before I hit the next slide, I'm just going to say this up front. I love an interactive audience. Listen, don't be shy. I'm staring at the chat screen. I see Josh is asking if the screen is being shared. It should be shared. If you have any technical difficulties, let us know. And I've got the Q&A panel open as well. So don't be shy. If there's an amazing question that you're going to ask, I will stop this presentation and I will absolutely answer a fun question that you might have. But before we do, or before you send anything, let's just get this conversation started. Sit back, relax. This is going to be a fun, fast-paced conversation. And as Lars pointed out, this has been an extraordinary time. These past couple of years, and listen, you heard people say this. I know you have. Everything's changing, but from what I've seen as a person who keeps their pulse on the industry, the last couple of years have truly been just an accelerating force in our industry. We've had record-breaking M&As. I work for Switch. You're welcome to Google us and see that we were a part of that M&A activity, which we're really excited about. We've seen how critical infrastructure has changed, and just, oh my God, everybody listening, what we're being tasked with supporting today is just absolutely ridiculous. In a positive manner. I'm not saying any of this is negative. It's just there's so much more demand. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about some of my latest research from Information Week, Data Center Frontier, AFCOM, and Data Center Knowledge. And this is why this is going to be a special webinar. We've got so many attendees. I'm actually still seeing this number go up. I love this. This is not going to be a typical webinar. When Isaac and Lars came to me and said, Bill, could you talk about some of those important things that are happening in this industry? I couldn't just pull from one report. So this is going to be a curated little journey, curated research that's going to focus on my latest reports, supply chains, working with digital twins, new requirements around sustainability, integrating a perimeterless workforce, and really much more than that. We're going to cover some really key trends that I really want all of you, and I'll tell you when there's going to be a moment of really reflectiveness where you can take this away with you. We'll talk about critical infrastructure, working with data, and everyone here is going to see, you are all the first ones, the very first ones to see a very special workshop that I led in March at Data Center World 2022. Literally the first ones who are going to see this, covering digital twin solutions. I can't wait to talk about that one. We're also talking about, obviously, very important ESG. That's a new one for you. Stay tuned. And sustainability. But before we do that, I kind of want to give you a little bit of a background. You know, Lars did a really cool job introducing me. Thank you, Lars. I'm so fortunate. I work at Switch, that awesome little company in the upper left-hand corner with the cool logo. And we at Switch build, maintain, design, and deliver some of the world's most advanced and sustainable hyperscale, exascale data center solutions, multi-million square foot, just giant facilities that are built around creating a much more sustainable and connected future. But other things that I get a chance to do is I'm a contributing editor to like Data Center Knowledge, Information Week, Data Center Frontier, Cisco, Oracle, and a whole bunch of other wonderful publications. But here's what that does. I'm a practitioner. I work in the data center industry, but my goal is to explain some of the most challenging topics that we have in our industry so that everybody has the opportunity to do something great with their tools. So that's what I write about. I do a lot of research for Information Week and AFCOM and Informa and a whole bunch of other ones. And most recently, I'm very proud of this, but I will not be upset if you open up a second screen and go to Amazon and look at this. Co-authored a now Amazon best-selling book called Greener Data. Got a really fun chapter in there, which you're welcome to check out and read. It's written by partly myself and a whole bunch of other really brilliant technologists talking about how we can create much more sustainable physical footprint for our digital world. Now, hang on a second. I hope you're all sitting down for this. This next part's very special and also a little bit personal. Remarkably, our conversation today, as Lars pointed out, is around modernization, around this digital society, right? But for me personally, it's a little crazy how it all got started. All right. When I was little, I'm actually gonna tell you something. I was born not in the United States. I was born in Kiev, Ukraine. My name's not really Bill. It's Vitaly. Yeah, now we're all friends. I know my real name. And I lived there throughout my childhood and actually came to the United States in the early 90s. And just in case you're wondering, usually the questions I get after I say something like this, I was born in Kiev. Yes, we have family there. Yes, we have lots of friends there. And yes, it's very difficult. And just to keep this very brief, because I guess we only have about an hour here, one thing that everybody could help out with, and this is a question that I usually get, is just simply, oh goodness, don't let what's happening in my home country become background noise, as it sometimes does. Just continue to keep the people of Ukraine and my home country in your thoughts as we go through clearly what is a very difficult time, but we obviously appreciate the world's support. Now, there's a little bit of a silver lining story here. I'll show you where exactly I'm from. So this is Kiev. This is downtown Kiev. Over to the left is the west side. This is like on the left of the Dnieper River is more like the central city. And where you see the little red outline, that's our old neighborhood, Berezniki. That's where we are from, right close to the Dnieper River. That's where we were born, or I was born at least, and it's where I lived for a while. And here's what's really cool. How I got started in technology was actually fascinating. So my brother in Soviet Ukraine at the time, he how do I say this right? He competed in this communications competition, right? but he didn't do it with a typical phone or anything else, right? He was one of the top people in the country with this thing. And maybe some of you know what that is. It's a telegraph, right? There you go. So he would sit there and he would go setting all these different codes and letters and words and sentences and paragraphs using this telegraph switch. And I remember specifically coming up to him in his room while he was practicing or talking to somebody, and I would be like, "Hey, Alex, can I sit on your lap and just listen?" And sometimes, you guys, sometimes he would let me put on these big headsets, these ear cans that they had, and he would give me the switch, and he taught me how to do numbers and like SOS. And so like I would just be pressing this, and somebody across the nation would be sending me a signal back. And oh my goodness, everybody, I thought this was the coolest thing in the entire world. And almost immediately I was enamored. I was fascinated by how these signals, how we're capable of communicating over such long distances. Now I was like 5, 6, 7 years old at the time. But even then I was able to see what was happening and at least see to some extent how important it is for us to be connected. And honestly, everybody listening, this is how I got started. This is my fascination with telecommunications, with the data center, with how we connect people together. Oh my goodness, everybody, have we come a long way since me sitting in Soviet Ukraine playing with this telegraph. And all of us have come a long way, right? There are these really funny TikTok and YouTube videos of teenagers being given rotary phones, those ones on the upper left, and they have no idea what to do with them. They just kind of press the buttons. They're like, this is pointless. I can't call anybody. And so, this is how far we've come, this modern society, this digital society, where all of you are a part of this. Okay. And it's really important to see just how connected we are. So me personally, I'm a millennial, by the way, who grew up seeing my brother compete with the telegraph to now having these unbelievable, powerful devices that allow us to be truly connected. Now, this word digital, I'm sorry if you're sick of it. I really am. I don't want you to, get mad at me saying, Bill, you're just out here throwing out marketing terms, but it is a really important term now because it is a driver of meaningful change, measurable change, where without an actual plan around modernization, many companies, according to this S&P study, are going to fade into obscurity by 2027. There's a really great quote from Lewis Carroll as far as what this means. Here, we must run as fast as we can just to stay in place. And if you wish to go anywhere, you must run twice as fast as that. So we see this term in this industry, in the data center space, this word of modernization, digital initiatives, whatever you want to call it, right? Forget the marketing aspect of it. It really is a term about survival. And this is, we're going to be jumping in to one research that I've done recently for Information Week that specifically asked about digital initiatives and modernization efforts. Now, this was published just a couple of months ago on Information Week. One of the questions that we asked, what is your status of business or digital modernization initiatives? And here's the difference. Instead of just asking this overarching global question, we really wanted to find out, well, the specifics. Like, okay, cool. We know that you're innovating, but what specifically are you doing? What objectives are you trying to overcome? And what we learned, and this is something I want everybody here listening to take a look at, a digital modernization journey doesn't have to be literally replacing the entire car. It could be, I don't know, getting a new wheel or something. Or improving the engine. 84% said that they have a plan right now. An additional 9% said they're going to have something soon. I don't know what that 7% is doing. I think I might need to show them the previous slide where they might be fading into obscurity here real soon, but we're going to have to talk to them. But here's some of the stuff that they're looking at: improving business processes, efficiency, getting closer to the customers and the users, reducing complexity, improving the visibility and visualization of data, and improving and simplifying processes, compliance, resource management, and so on. So these are all really, really important aspects because the concepts of digital, this modernization journey, is changing so very quickly. So if you take a look at our global population, we are about 7.8 billion people, and then we've got all of these different kinds of social users, internet users are continuing to grow, unique mobile phone users. Now, let me point out something very, very important. The way everybody on this call, the way we are actively being connected into this world is changing, actively changing, because this concept of the internet connected society is already evolving. And believe it or not, everybody on this call, you're a part of this evolution. I'll talk about it in just a second. So the mobile share of daily internet time, and take a look at this from 2015, just over the course of about 5 to 6 years, more than half of the time we spend connected in the cloud or the internet is, I know you can't see me. Maybe if we get the camera turned on, you can see me waving around all these different phones I have in front of me. But these mobile devices now, and let me ask everybody a rhetorical question here. Do you think that mobile devices, these phones that we're staring at, is that it? Is this the future? Are we done evolving? No, I didn't think so. Like, we're really not, right? Because this is just an evolutionary point, because I can tell you right now that the future of how we're going to be connecting is not going to be us walking down the street, bumping into signs and lampposts, staring at a phone screen. We are going to be evolving. And this is something that I'm seeing already in new and emerging concepts around, drumroll, the metaverse. Now, please don't get mad at me if this is something you're already rolling your eyes around. Forget the word for just a second, the word metaverse, right? We're talking about the future for just a sec, how we're going to be connecting and how we're going to be using devices and content and all of this stuff. We are going to see a highly immersive virtual world where people gather to socialize, play, and work. And this concept, this metaverse, let's call it, can be seen as an embodied internet that you're inside of, rather than just looking at, something that you are literally a part of. And it's very, very special. Now, this may well be the successor to the mobile internet that we see today. In fact, you can take a look at this. Apple is already looking into internet-enabled contact lenses to create an augmented reality kind of a space. This metaverse, this concept of an embodied internet, could offer near real-life experiences, online meetings, social media interactions with friends and family, medical consultations, shopping, clothes, attending live concerts, and so on. And all of this that we're talking about, and Lars did a great job mentioning this, is a part of this fourth industrial revolution. And it's something that we're both powering and actively trying to survive. This is new for you. The first industrial revolution was we used water and steam to mechanize production. The second, electric power to create mass production. And the third, used electronics and information technology to automate production as well. Now, with this fourth industrial revolution, is building on the previous one, this digital revolution that's been happening, I would say, since like the middle of the last century for sure. And it's characterized by a fusion of technology that is actively blurring the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. I want to say something. This quote was actually released by the World Economic Forum in 2018, before the word, quote, metaverse was even invented. So even world leaders understand that the future of how we're going to be connecting and what we're going to be doing is fundamentally different. Now, we do have a question coming in from an anonymous attendee. Cool. Do you expect mobile share of daily internet to decrease from what it was at the height of the pandemic, and just overall internet time, or just internet time in general? I absolutely don't think that we're going to be reducing the amount of time that we're going to be connected. Obviously, there's going to be ebbs and flows. But I think the level of connectivity, and especially now that we're seeing things like operational technology systems, so like manufacturing machines and other componentry that never, ever was connected before, are coming online. So great question. I don't think we're going to be seeing a reduction in the amount of connectivity that we're going to be doing. And I think it's definitely going to continue to increase, just because of how connected we are and how much data that we actively produce. So great question. Keep those coming, and I'll stop and I'll answer those as they come in. But talking about the fourth industrial revolution and power and everything else, we're going to dive into some really special trends and metrics and numbers here that are going to discuss what's driving our market, the state of the data center 2022. Now, this research is from AFCOM largely, and it is curated. Please understand, this is not the entire report. Everybody who wants the entire report, either ping me online, which, by the way, I am totally open to making sure that we keep this connection and conversation going. So I hope that my LinkedIn and Twitter is blowing up with new friends and connections. But let's talk about some of these reports, because I'll tell you what, these numbers, oh my goodness, they were fascinating to see this. So one of the things that we asked was around data center growth and density. And here's what we found. Typically, respondents say they're going to be, expecting to renovate and expand some of their data centers. Density and efficiency continue to be key trends that we're going to talk about in just a second. And then, hang on a second, 30% stated they're going to be building 50 or more data center locations. Whoa, that is That is absolutely a really, really, really high number. And what we're seeing here is that, by the way, Tom, we actually had to go back and review that number because we thought somebody was trolling our our survey results. We're like, oh, we're just going to build 100 new locations tomorrow. But that's not necessarily the case, right? We actually looked at those results and we saw that many, many, many of these organizations are going to be looking at literally building out the edge. So we found that, yes, organizations are going to be building out a whole lot more locations to support their connectivity needs. And again, it's not just this giant facilities, but edge environments, and there's going to be massive amount of investment in there. And these are not just going to be your typical facilities. These environments are going to be much more dense than they ever were before. And this is a big respondent factor that we got as well. Like the majority of respondents feel like their rack density is going to continue to increase. And we've seen this trend continue to grow. So the big question is, we cannot be deploying, or are we still deploying, data centers the way we did a few years ago, or are we actively looking at ways we can be more efficient? Now, if we pop the hood a little bit here, we're going to take a look at something interesting: data, power, and what's happening under the data center hood. Well, obviously, we are seeing that many more are actively using green energy, renewable energy as a powerful source. And, I'm actually going to take a look at some of my notes here while we're doing this live, so I can give you a couple more data feed points. And what we're seeing actively is that this is only going to continue to grow. And here's the crazy part: more than 90% of people are saying that they're going to be managing. Oops! Oh my gosh! I think my deck just went away. Oh my God! This is so embarrassing. You all can see my background. There we go. I can't believe I just did that. That's a first. Time out, everybody. Everybody, time out. Clearly, my coffee is not working today. I do apologize. 1 second. And let's go to the right slide. One sec. And there we go. 92% of folks that actually took this survey realized that they're going to be managing a lot more data. And they said they're going to be doing between 10 and 50 petabytes over the next 12 to 36 months or more, which is absolutely crazy. And most of these organizations are also going to be living on the edge. And that's what respondents have actually been saying here as well, is that they're going to be seeing many, many more spots that they're going to be deploying. And these are not large locations, by the way. Please time out with that. These are going to be actual facilities that are going to be smaller, sometimes attached to a cell phone tower, sometimes just a small location. But that is what we found out, that they're going to be deploying between 10 and 50 locations between the next 12 and 36 months. And that is a huge, huge number to, again, bridge things like the digital divide, support new connectivity methods, and so on. And a big part of this as well, in working with things like renewable energy, timeout, was ESG. The vast majority of respondents to this AFCOM report stated that ESG, more than 80%, was a critical part of their planning process and what they're doing with their organizations. Now, hang on a second. I know I can't see you nodding or anything, but if ESG is a new term for you, please know that it absolutely does matter. And this is a big focus on renewable energy, social, and governance, and the implications of this in a digital economy. So let me give you an example, right? So corporate executives are increasingly motivated to improve their ESG ratings and thereby drive increased investment in their stock by institutional investors. And not just that, public and private organizations. Here's what we do potentially. We have meaningful impact on our customers with ESG because we supply 100% renewable power for their IT deployments. But that means also, time out, they're capable of taking that and retiring it against their own ESG metrics and requirements. So they actually get a certificate in saying, hey, investors, public market, we are an active company that is looking at ways we can improve environmental aspects, social, and governance. Now, when we speak with different organizations, I'm actually going to share this with you. This is what they're focusing on: carbon emissions, waste and recycling, renewable energy, climate change management, labor, board structures, and so on. Here's another big one: water. I haven't mentioned this one yet, but in our reports, we consistently see that water conservation and conservation efforts are absolutely huge initiatives for a lot of different kinds of organizations, especially those in the Southwest. For example, I'm just going to give you one. We at Switch built a 14-mile, 4,000 acre foot effluent water pipeline to support a 7.2 million square foot campus in Nevada. Now, again, we have a lot of sunshine, but not that much water. So this is going to allow us to use 100% recycled gray effluent, whatever you want to call it, water to disperse heat from our equipment when we need it without ever touching the resources that are in the local rivers. And that's really, really special. Part of the reason why we take that environmental element so critically. Okay. Excuse me. For everybody else listening here, if this is new for you, please understand that ESG is really, really important. It's an aspect that we are all actively looking at to make sure that we can be much better citizens, really, of this earth and better neighbors as well. So if there's something you can improve upon, I absolutely see you doing this, and absolutely something that you can take a look at. I'm getting a couple of really wonderful questions coming in here, and I like this a lot. Let's see what we've got. One question coming in is what is Web 0.3 and the metaverse? Actually, what's the difference? Well, you know what? It's not there's a difference. I would actually honestly see them more as like a Venn diagram overlapping. And Web 3 is more of like an idea, a new iteration of the World Wide Web that's based on based on blockchain technology that incorporates concepts of decentralization and token-based economics. So it's more of a ledger-based, transparent mode of internet communication, I would say, whereas the metaverse is more of this bigger picture embodied internet that we're talking about. So really great question. Here's another one from Josh. Do you see any particular set of sustainability minded guidelines, GRI, there you go, ISO, Dow Jones Sustainability Index, S&P is another one already, becoming what might be the industry-wide norm? Great question. The ISO one, the Dow Jones and the S&P ratings, the ESG one at least, have been really good. I have to take a look at some of the other authentication and authorization bodies that are now working specifically with ESG standardization. But there's going to be a few of them, but there are some larger bodies, Josh, like you mentioned, Dow Jones and ISO 14,000. Those are going to be generally like the same, or have similar ideas and notions of how to become or help an organization become a little bit more sustainable. So great questions, everybody. Keep those coming. Let's keep going here, because as we've been talking about this ESG, we're going to focus a little bit on the sustainability, the E part of it, right? So power consumption and something known as the hyperscale shift. We've been doing a lot of research on this. I've published several blogs on the Upside blog around the hyperscale shift specifically. Let's talk about this. Let's just focus on this for just a second here. Power consumption. Data center uses a lot of power, between 20 and 50 terawatt hours a year. And that is honestly more than some countries combined. And if we take a look at the world in general, we see that the amount of hyperscale and data center locations only continues to grow. A really interesting research group called Synergy did a good study, and there was a couple of good published articles on DCK and Data Center Frontier. There's now about 600 more actually now in the world, twice as many as there were 5 years ago. And despite logistical and supply chain issues, which, by the way, we're going to cover, caused by the pandemic, 52 of these facilities came online in 2020. 451 research is saying that there's 6,600 plus colocation and wholesale data center facilities largely across the world. And these numbers only continue to go up. And this is not bad news. Inefficient legacy data centers are going by the wayside. This was something that we've spoken at with Information Week respondents, as well as Data Center Knowledge and Data Center Frontier and AvCom folks as well. And this is what they've been talking about, this hyperscale shift. There was a really good research study in 2016 that said the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab estimated that if 80% of servers in small US data centers moved to hyperscale facilities, this would result in a 25% energy use drop. And that's really special, because here's the thing. Legacy data centers, for those organizations that don't know what they're doing, I mean, they're running really high PUEs. There's no containment. They are just not as efficient as you'd think they were. And now we're really seeing how some of these legacy ecosystems are asking very much reflective questions of, how do I do this? How do I become a much better organization? How do I become a much better digital organization? And what do I do next? Now, before anyone starts throwing shade at me, I am not here to tell you to shut down your data center. I am not here to tell you that enterprise data centers are bad. I actually did a talk recently where someone stood up and said, you know, Bill, here's what we're doing in our enterprise data center. It was just constructed in 2019. He was telling me it was concrete slab. It had a really great containment, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, sounds like a great data center. You probably don't need to move it. You could probably keep it where it is, and you can probably keep doing what you're doing. The challenge here aren't next generation hyper efficient data centers. It's all of those other locations. And all of you attendees, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. It's those data center closets that are cooled with a Walmart fan. And you think I'm kidding. That is something that I've seen. And that is where it gets really scary because of outages, human errors, issues with equipment, and so on. And that is why we're seeing this much more shift to more efficient data center solutions, which is actively happening right now as these co-location hyperscalers are mopping up small services, excuse me, for small corporations or even things like universities that would have to manage their own stuff in the past. This is just a shift. It's not like anybody's losing their jobs. This industry is in like hyper mode in terms of needing more people to support digital infrastructure. And what's really fascinating here is that we are moving at such a pace that people, I'm not going to say business leaders, but people need to understand that our facilities, your facilities, I'm pointing at the screen right now. I know you can't see me. Your facilities have far more impact on this fourth industrial revolution that we've been talking about, the metaverse and in climate change than people actually realize. I'm looking at my Q&A screen right here. Hey, everybody, thanks for asking some questions here. I really appreciate it. To the anonymous attendee, I wish I knew your name. The fourth industrial revolution doesn't seem much different than the third. What's the difference? I love that question. You know, I'm actually going to pause here because this is a nice little transition slide. And I'm going to, if you will all let me, oh my gosh, where is it? There it is. I'm going to go back to this one really quick. So the third industrial revolution was really more about your basic fundamental IT. Think to like the 1990s and the 2000 bubble, the dot-com bubble, and everything along those lines. Today, the fourth industrial revolution is building on those PCs, is building on those laptops, is building on those new network technologies that are no longer bridges and hubs, but are now advanced layer 2, layer 3 switches, smarter routing capabilities, way faster network capabilities as well, lower latency, lower bandwidth, just being able to distribute much more rich content as we enter the fourth industrial revolution, where we start to become immersed and use technologies that blur the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. That's how we're saying we're building on this third industrial revolution to do things like augmented reality and virtual reality and data-driven systems, which just hold that question. We are going to be talking about that in just a second here. Great question. There's another question here from Rajesh. Great question. What type of data center and what is the difference from tier 1 to 4 data center? That's, it's a great like an Uptime Institute tier modeling. It really goes into how resilient, redundant, and what aspects of redundancy and resiliency you build into your data center. We can talk about the tiers right now, Rajesh. Definitely an offline conversation, and that's very easy. Google search as well there. So good question. There's differences out there and there's good use cases for each, right? Just basically what kind of uptime that you're willing to settle with in your SLA. Good question there. I like that one a lot. We have some more questions coming in. Boy, there's great ones. We'll talk about those in just a second. Let me come back to that. I want to talk about some of the issues that we've been having in our industry, some of the challenges that we've been facing. So bear with me here as we sort of jump into this. When we start to take a look at the data center industry, there's definitely some challenges that we've been seeing. And this is where I'm going to be, honestly, I'm really excited to share some of this research because maybe I'll see some more head nodding. In our AFCOM state of the data center report, there, I said it right. We asked for the first time ever questions about the supply chain. And maybe if all of you go to the chat window or the Q&A, have you seen that? Have you all experienced any sort of supply chain issues, delays in getting gear? I'm actually going to take a sip of water here. Let me know. Hit me up in the chat window or the Q&A to tell me if you've experienced any kind of supply chain issues. Go ahead. I know that was a little bit of an impromptu question. There we go. Thank you, Jesse. I see you responding. Yep, there's a couple more people saying, oh my God, John, I'm sorry. Oh, Joseph. Holy cow. Oh, I mean, all of you all are telling me that my research is right, at least. So thank you for some of those responses. Oh man, John. Yeah, Jesse, absolutely. Every day. Oh my goodness. I see that. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that. All right. Well, you're all responding to me. So let me tell you what the research pointed out. About more than half the respondents say that they had both general strain and supply chain constraints, and some of them pandemic related. So, I mean, I see it from you. I want to tell you about a statistic that I did not expect to see, certainly not this high, this one. Okay. 25% of respondents stated that they had an issue, an outage that was caused because of a supply chain issue. Now, I'm not talking like a complete widespread outage. Jim, I think I see your hand is up, Jim. But if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in into the what's it called, into the Q&A here, and I'll see if I can answer it. And Keith, I see, yeah, 6 months plus for services and devices, network devices, yeah, servers, excuse me. No, I hear you 100% there. And this is something that we've seen across the board, right? The vast majority have seen some kind of a strain, but this one is scary for me, where 25%, like I said, saw some kind of an outage. And so we actually, during a focus group at AFCOM, I'm like, hang on a second, I wasn't expecting this. Can you please give me some more detail on this? You know, give me some more information on what you're seeing out there. And they were telling me, like, if we didn't get a part for a server, if we didn't get a part, you know, for an electrical component. I see the comment in the chat window, waiting on a supply of metering PCBs since last year. Oh my God, sending you a virtual hug here. You know, this became a very, very serious issue for a lot of different organizations and a lot of leaders. And here's the thing, everybody who's answered me, have you had to change the way you source or the way you work with suppliers because of these kinds of issues? And that is what we actually found out, was that many of these leaders who are experiencing constraints, time out, everybody, they had to make changes. Here's what they did. They went from just in time to just in case, literally purchasing way more than they need just to have it on stock. They said that they were really reevaluating the way they source and what they source and where they get information from. They have been challenging their vendors to make sure that they are capable of supplying their gear much more effectively. And here's another big one that we found. They're skipping upgrades. Yeah, they're skipping iteration upgrades. So in this cases, right, we got Keith saying he's been waiting 6 months for servers and networking devices. In some situations, everybody listening, some of our customers and people that we work with and talk to, they're like, well, you know what? We're just going to skip a version, put an order in for the next one as soon as it comes out. And then that way, at least we know we'll be ready. So yeah, that's a part of the way that we've seen refresh cycles and supply chain challenges impact what we do in our data center. All right, next challenge. No one's going to be surprised. I just am guaranteeing it. No one's going to be surprised by this one. People, we are going to be seeing, you know, continued challenges in finding good help is definitely very difficult. The majority of respondents to this survey indicated both an increase in millennials, 75%, and Gen Z, 66%, entering the data center industry. The challenges, we don't know what to do with them because finding help is really, really difficult. Now, this is the first time we've actually changed up the questions to the survey. And here's the big one: recruiting multi-skilled data center operators, 50%. Why is that one the most challenging? I'll tell you. Multi-skilled operators, MSOs, are actually one of the most sought after type of data center personnel in our industry right now, because these are people, hang on a second, these are people who are capable of understanding architectural engineering requirements as well as translating those requirements into business acumen and verbiage and understanding the project management aspects of it. And that is really, really big. So all of a sudden you have a person who both understands the engineering, architectural requirements, but can also have a conversation with senior leadership to make sure that they understand what they need. That's critical. And that's something that's very important. And if you're listening to this and it's curious for you, something to explore potentially as a career move. Diversity, equality, and inclusion. This goes back to part of that ESG, the S part of it. Most respondents currently are implementing or expanding their diversity, inclusion, and equality programs. Many already have, and many are going to be including their programs when they expand some of their initiatives. That is huge. Diversity, equality, and inclusion programs are very, very big. It's something that we at Switch take to heart. And it's something that as a part of infrastructure masons, I work very closely. And it's very special. By the way, if anyone's very curious, imasons.org is a part of an organization that I'm a part of. And I'm the Millennial and Gen Z chairperson for that group. And again, we are seeing a lot of these challenges and I'm working with the industry to help overcome them. Another one is enticing a new generation of data center leaders. How do we get these young people, which is not easy still, and a clear majority, about 80%, 82%, excuse me, say it's still challenging to get a young person into a data center. Here's why. An electrical engineer who graduates with an electrical engineer degree has no idea that their underlying education is perfect for the data center industry or working with data center technology. So we're trying to get more people in there. Sometimes that might means enticing new people, offering flexible hours, better work environments, and so on. Continuing education and training. These are some of the bigger challenges that we're seeing, especially during our modernization efforts to become more nimble, more agile, and so on. All right. We've got about 20 minutes left here. I've got maybe about 10 more minutes of talking. So get your questions ready. Because I'm seeing that there's a bunch of them already in the chat, in the queue for the Q&A window here. So keep those coming. We're gonna answer those. Josh, I see yours. An anonymous attendee, I see your question as well. Thanks for that. Jim, I've got yours, and yeah, Keith, yeah, budgeting nightmare for supply chain challenges, absolutely. All right. This is my favorite part of the conversation. If you are on your Amazon shopping list or searching for cat videos on YouTube, come back. Come on back here, everybody. Come back to this presentation. I'll give you a second because this is where it gets really fun. This is where we're going to talk about digital twins. This is where we're going to be talking about some really advanced technology. So come hang out with me here for just a second. So this is a very special part of our curated research conversation here because I'm actually going to be showing you some of the tools that we discussed. First time seeing this outside of the AFCOM Data Center World event that was held in March in Austin. So we're going to see how leaders are leveraging data to drive meaningful, measurable change. During the event at Data Center World, we really learned something really important. The data center and the tools that have been supporting them have changed, right? We've gone from traditional enterprise data centers to enterprise hybrid IT and colo, and so much has changed over the past 10 to 11 years. I mean, it's just generational leaps. And we've gone from traditional data center operators to data center operators, colo C-suite, tenants, and more. Key topics of concern went from resiliency and just resource utilization to resiliency, resource utilization, security, Lars mentioned this as well, sustainability, and most of all, transparency. I'm going to stop there for just a second. Multiple research points taken from a lot of different organizations. We're talking about traditional co-locations, tier 2, tier 3 businesses, as well as enterprises. And here's what they want. They are expecting access to sustainable data, better information. Customers and stakeholders are demanding accountability in climate, pushing sustainability near the top of the agenda in selecting sites, providers, and technology and equipment. That word tenants, please do not think that I'm talking about co-locations and hyperscalers alone. If you are an enterprise user, you're an enterprise organization, your tenants, those are your customers. You are company XYZ that owns their own data center. Your tenants are, your internal customers, your internal users. And they, especially at the management side of it, this is what they need. They absolutely need, an ability to see what's actually happening in their data center so they can report it more effectively. Emerging is a new emphasis by data center operators to provide sustainable IT infrastructure in data centers. This is so important. It's consistently showing up in RFPs. They want to know where their power is coming from, percent of which is renewable. Are they making public commitments to moving to renewable power? All of this is absolutely critical. And it brings us to this next point, which I'm really, really excited about. Oh man, John, you're asking some really good questions. Jim, I see your question there as well. We'll get to those in just a second. Data centers and digital twins. This is where it's going to get fun, everybody. The pictures you're seeing here, and by the way, Isaac and Upside haven't seen these yet. I literally added them early this morning because I thought they were really cool. And this is also part of our curated conversation here. This was done on Monday. It was a packed session full of awesome, brilliant people where I did a 3-hour Leaders Lab workshop, let's call it, on advanced concepts of DCIM, data center infrastructure management. And a big part of this conversation was the practical application of digital technologies, digital twins, new types of sensors, and so on. And when I say practical, if you can take a look in the upper right hand, there's a lady in a green skirt, and she's actually wearing an Oculus headset. And if you take a look at the lower 2 screens there, those other 2 lower pictures, I'm sorry, it's kind of sideways. I was really trying to take a picture. We'll have an example of it in just a second if you can't see. That's what she was seeing. She was literally walking through a live data hall, and she was able to do CFD, computational fluid dynamics, and see how airflow and how cooling and how electrical systems were working within this active data hall, all while we were presenting and showcasing how easy it was to navigate and what you could do with this technology. Now, this person that came up, her name's Linda. She had never put this thing on. She's a data center operator, but she'd never seen anything like this. And she was capable on her very first try of navigating, walking through the facility, and afterwards saying that I didn't realize that something like this was available. Number one. Number two, I never realized that something like this could just be used. It wasn't very difficult to use this. So a digital twin of your data center is a map, a logical map of assets in the facility, the room, the cage, the rack, and the server level with related attributes and interdependencies. And you have a very intimate, deep level view of your infrastructure, which makes a lot of decision-making processes much, much easier. And again, you're seeing these slides that were from my workshop. It makes things like managing and onboarding tenants and internal customers much more effective because you're able to see what's there, what's usable, what's sellable, what can you charge back. You get insights on where to put your next tenant or your piece of IT equipment based on capacity and availability needs. Because again, these are not reactive tools. These are proactive, prescriptive tools in a way that give you much more visibility into your architecture. Compared to like 2011, the capabilities are so much stronger in what you're capable of doing. Plus, from what we've seen when these are being deployed, it makes people so much more efficient with an instant view of resources, helping any kind of provider, whether it's enterprise or co-locations, cut the amount of time it takes to onboard from days to hours and maximize their data center resources, their precious data center resources. Here's another one: vulnerabilities and risk. And this is something that Lars talked about earlier for just a little bit. Being able to simulate and model what you're going to be deploying reduces risk. And remember, with a connected ecosystem, you're actually capable of walking through and seeing, for example, looking over and seeing how, hey, hang on a second, that UPS hasn't been patched or updated. And this can actually become a part of your add, move, or change management process where you can roll out specific updates to pieces of your equipment so that you are not vulnerable and that you do not leave holes in your infrastructure. So things like hotspot management, understanding cooling and eliminating hotspots is a big one. Again, not reactively, but proactively, doing things like adds, moves, changes, simulating ads, automating workflows, creating audit trails. This is what these sensors are actively doing. They're making our life easier in terms of managing next generation infrastructure. All right. Time out. I know I've talked about this, and it's easy to show you slide decks and what you're actually, potentially capable of doing. But I really, really want everyone to see what this looks like in action. So, hey, everybody, all of my attendees, come back here for literally 2 minutes. I'm going to show you a video of a digital twin in a real live active data hall. I mean, this is a real thing. So let's take a look at this. And this is a real customer. It's not a huge data center, but this is a real user accessing and using digital twins in a DCIM fashion. So, all right, let's hit play. I was talking for a little bit extra to see if anybody else would come, and we got people here. So let me go ahead and hit play here. You can take a look with me. All right, so what does it look like within the data center? I'll walk you through this. like David Attenborough. So here you are, you're seeing this. It's a real life example of a digital twin model of a real active data hall. And remember, yes, you're seeing this, but you can also use VR headsets. And it's built from a comprehensive list of objects, library, IT, power, cooling equipment. You're able to see your capacity utilization dashboards, depending on what you're looking at, which rack. You have a visual and smart inventory of all assets. Remember that object IT library is so huge already and much more mature. Look at that. I guess except for those two people, this is an actual real live representation. And with built-in CFD engines, you're actually able to do things like digital twins and understand and see how cooling is delivered to the racks timeout, and you're able to see inside of the racks as well. You look at one, you select it, and you can see how it's working and operating. Within those racks themselves, you have a complete view of power, network, and connectivity. So you have a much better understanding of your resources utilization, PDU panel scheduling. You're capable of seeing inside, sync live data from SNMP enabled devices, but not only SNMP, other methods of communication are accepted as well. You can keep track of socket connectivity, on rack PDUs, and understand what's happening inside, and a whole lot more. That was just a brief little visualization of what you can do with this kind of stuff. Now, please note, this is not just me scraping at the future saying, oh, this is such cool stuff. We're going to be digital data centers everywhere. This is in the wild. This is actively being used right now. And these are real tools that people are using every single day to make their lives easier. All right, everybody. All right, let's take a deep breath. I'm actually going to drink some water here. Hang on. That was a lot. That was a lot. We covered a curated conversation along with a lot of different discussion points, research from Information Week, AFCOM, data center knowledge, and a whole lot of other ones. I know this was a lot to take in, but here's some of the big points that I just want everyone to take away. And this is that reflective moment. Think about your infrastructure. Think about your data centers. None of them are perfect, but all of them have the capability to do brilliant and amazing things for the people that use the resources that are inside of them. And it's in these types of moments that we have to think about, what can I do better? What can I improve? Are there digital technologies that can make my life fundamentally easier? And how do these systems apply to what I do and the resources that I deliver every single day? Don't be scared. There is no room for complacency in this industry. Please know that. There's literally no room for that. So testing out and trying out these new technologies is much easier than it was ever before. I can tell you right now that many leaders in this industry are actively looking at digital solutions, modernization, and in some cases, these digital twins to make their infrastructures so much better. It looks like we've got a few questions. I'm going to leave this slide up. This is a way that you can connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Twitter, on Facebook. You can go to billclayman.com. That's my website. Do not be a stranger. I love continuing this conversation. And this way you can also see where I've got new reports coming out, new studies, and everything in between. But aside from that, Isaac, I think maybe should we take some questions that came in? What do you think?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Bill. Great presentation. We've got a few questions on whether or not the slides will be available. And yes, we will send out the slides and the webinar recording in a couple of days. So let's jump into this. Bill, I think this one was asked during the hyperscale portion of the presentation. Mm-hmm. It seems like energy use is a moving target in the industry, though. How accurate is that 25% decrease if we continue to produce unprecedented amounts of data?
Holy cow. You ready for this, everybody? Data growth and infrastructure growth is not directly parallel to how much energy we use. Because here's the thing, right? As our data has been increasing, a part of that jump from the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution is density and how much data we can put on a switch, on a physical server, and how much information users we can put on a physical server as well. So yes, we're going to be continuing to see decreases because our infrastructure, our ports on a switch are capable of supporting more traffic. Our cables are carrying more traffic. Our physical infrastructure is carrying way more traffic. So all of this allows us to do way more with less infrastructure while still supporting more users. Now, here's the thing. In the co-location and hyperscale space, it is in our absolute best interest to be as sustainable and as dense as humanly possible, because we want to pass that on to the users, the environment. Obviously, we want to be able to have more people in our infrastructure. So I do absolutely see this, and this has been confirmed with numerous reports that it is a non-linear sort of progression, non-parallel progression of increasing data use and then increasing energy use. Is actually data use is skyrocketing while the amount of energy that we use and to support that skyrocketing data use is actually kind of leveling out a little bit and even decreasing in some cases.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Let's move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we might see broader acceptance of using cross-laminated timber outside of Europe as the main building material to reduce the use of concrete and steel in the data center shell, or perhaps a hybrid so as to reduce the embodied carbon footprint of the build? Great question, Josh.
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. You know this. It's funny because Josh and I have spoken a lot, and we talk about data center architecture a lot as well. Building material and how we design and construct our data centers is always going to be a topic of conversation. It's scary, right? Because if you do it wrong, you potentially could face some serious issues, right? If you take a look at what happened with the OVH fire out in Europe, right? If this is the first time you're hearing about this, Google it. It was extraordinary. It was a tier 3+ data center that unfortunately was engulfed in flames. And right now, initial conversations are that there was a water leak on an inverter that sparked this. But other conversations are around the building material that was used for that facility. So, when you start talking about, what we use to build data centers, or in this case, potentially laminated timber, to reduce the embodied carbon footprint. I mean, no one's going to be against that, but we have to ensure the safety of both the people, obviously, and the physical infrastructure that are inside those facilities. I'm not opposed to any new kind of building material that's validated. And I really think that as we sort of advance our building materials for physical infrastructure, critical infrastructure, there's no reason, just like battery technology or anything else, that people shouldn't be looking at it as long as it's safe, and validated. So great question, Josh.
All right, thank you, Bill. All right, let's go on to the next one. Given equipment densities are increasing, are you seeing the adaptation of adoption of in-row cooling from chilled water to DX cooling?
That's a great question, Jim. I'm really seeing a lot more organizations try and deliver cooling solutions that don't use water. Or have a much smaller reliance on water, right? Dissipating heat without it. And so I do agree with you, right? So let me give you a really good example here, Jim. So we at Switch, we do air cooling. And because of how dense we are and our own patented designs, we're capable of doing about 55 kilowatts per rack, air cooled, right? And that is our own sort of this really cool airflow T-skiff contained chimney system that we're capable of using that really does a great job containing heat, moving it out, and chilling that entire little pod. I do see the adaptation of in-row cooling, and I do see the adaptation of new cooling technologies above and beyond what we have right now to potentially reduce the amount of need that we use of water, for example, to cool our infrastructure. So Jim, I'm actually really excited about how people are seeing cooling, and a big part of it, by the way, Jim, is when they run these computational fluid dynamics, when they do these digital twin studies and see where they can actually have improvements for their in-row cooling and where they can potentially adapt new kinds of technology. So really good question there, Jim.
Great, thank you, Jim. Thanks, Bill. Are you concerned regarding the availability of electricity?
Oh my God, John, what an amazing question. Yes and no. We talk about power, right? People are like, why don't you build in the middle of South Dakota? Nothing against South Dakota, right? Sometimes you just don't have the power availability, infrastructure availability. Okay. John, I'm going to tell you this. On Upsite, I wrote an article about the nuclear powered data center. What is this guy talking about? No, I'm not kidding. Yes, I wrote about data centers being powered by SMRs, small modular reactors, literally behind the grid, campuses that are capable of providing power to local communities as well as a data center. I'm kind of a big proponent of that. Despite being someone who lived through Chernobyl, I'm still a fan of nuclear power when it's done right, clearly. But in this case, the availability of electricity is a fascinating question, right? Because we in Nevada, let me give you this really other example. I know we're at the top. We have a 555 megawatt solar array that's backed by 850 megawatt hours of Tesla Megapack batteries. So we are being creative in how we develop and design the availability of electricity. And some of it, John, is actually behind the grid, right? Where we don't even touch legacy infrastructure. So I'm excited that the challenges of potentially electric availability or power availability, necessity is the mother of all inventions, right? Where we're actually creating new sources and new ways to power critical infrastructure. So as concerned as I am, I'm also really excited about the future, how we're going to power large hyperscale critical infrastructure.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. I think we got time for one more, and this one's kind of interesting, not really data center related, but I think interesting nonetheless. Is the wider adoption of the metaverse going to have a negative impact on actual human interaction?
I want to know who this anonymous attendee that keeps asking questions. Maybe it's a different one. That's a very good question. I have no idea, right? If you draw a parallel to mobile devices, let me ask you the same question. Do you think that the adoption of mobile devices has been bad for people? It's kind of easy to say, yeah, right. Everything from neck problems to, walking into light posts to kids spending a lot of time on these devices. I think that what's going to happen ultimately is that this metaverse is going to create this blurred line between physical reality and virtual reality, where it's going to overlap digital aspects into the physical world. So my answer, this is going to be different. Kind of like those contact lenses that Apple is starting to patent that are augmented reality. You can overlay digital aspects over real life. Maybe that'll improve how we have human interaction. Maybe it'll be like the Babel, the Tower of Babel translator for everything that we do and how we communicate with people much more directly. It might help. I don't have a good answer for that, unfortunately, just because I'm not sure what that's going to look like in the near future. I just know that it's coming.
Very good. Thanks, Bill. That was a fun one. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here today and everyone who joined us for all of our webinars this month. Thank you all to all of the speakers. And Bill, thank you so much. This was such a great way to wrap up our 7th annual Airflow Management Awareness Month. It's always great to have you. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate everything that you do for us here at Upsite. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Bill.
Thanks, everyone.